Well, hello, everybody out there on the internet. We are here, myself, Rob Roberts with the Voice Geeks Network, vognetwork.com, and the one and only Bobby Blackwolf
Hello, everybody.
to talk about Dragon Con 2024 and recap some of the things that we got to do at the show and talked about at the show, and all that good stuff that comes with another year of Dragon Con. Bobby, you are an Atlanta native, and
Yeah.
you've been to Dragon Con for a very long time, very, very long
Yes.
time. What number Dragon Con was this for you?
Okay, so I don't know because I didn't attend every year. I do know that the first year I attended was 1997,
Uh,
and I know this because I have the books for that. But also, I know this because I have the 1996 shirt, and I was in college at the time and broke and couldn't afford that year's Dragon Con shirt, but they had the previous years on sale. And so that's why I have the 96 shirt that I bought in 97 because they had them on clearance. So 97 was my first year, but I did not attend like 98 and like some of the
okay.
2000s and stuff like that.
Okay, see, it was a little hit and miss for a little bit there.
Yeah.
So, okay, but still, was this the best one yet?
Yes, it was.
Awesome. I agree. This is probably my favorite one
Yeah.
yet. So let's get into how we do it here with the VOG Network roundtables. We like to, most YouTubers are going to make you wait for the bottom line at the very, very end after a like, comment, subscribe. We like to do the bottom line first. So the bottom
Mhm.
line, Bobby Blackwolf, what was your favorite moment or memory of Dragon Con 2024?
It's always when you first get there and you get to see the people that you haven't seen in 360 something days since the last Dragon Con and know that you're going to have a great weekend getting to see them and also meeting new people that you're going to be looking forward to seeing in 360 days the next time you go. So that's my favorite memory. What about yours? What's your favorite memory
Uh,
or moment?
Honestly, and I know we're going to talk about panels and all that good stuff a little later, but you and I were a little more involved with Dragon Con
Yep.
this year, doing some moderation, not just some of the roundtables or not roundtables, but well, no, they were roundtables. I can never
Yeah.
remember the branding in the lead up
They're
to.
square, they're
Yes,
rectangular.
yes, in the lead up to the convention, but actually getting to moderate and assist with some of the main
Yeah.
programming, which was new for us. We've always worked with historically the fan tracks like digital media, formerly podcasting track and video
Hmm.
gaming track. And I think you've dabbled on the Star Trek track and some other, and I
Yeah.
did horror track one year, but this is the first year where you and I did main programming. So that was huge. So my favorite memory was that Star Wars panel I got to do on
Yeah.
Saturday, which was really like just a hodgepodge of the different Disney Plus shows, including just like, a Hollywood legend. Danny Trejo's on that panel.
Mhm.
Mandy Jacinto is an amazing actor, from The Acolyte. Natasha Liu Bordizzo, Giancarlo Esposito. It was, none of them were from the same show, but they were all from
Mhm.
the same universe. And I would say just getting to share that stage specifically with Danny Trejo, because I think he only did 2 appearances on
Yeah.
stage during the con. So getting to do that, I think, was just a favorite memory. And I explain this to my friends, like, I work hard when I'm moderating and I've got my
Mhm.
system and I know how to, and you do too, and all the Dragon Con mods. But I really felt like for that hour, it's like I was like disassociating and I was in the audience watching me do this, but really watching the panel and like what a good show it was.
Yeah.
And it was just almost kind of like half my brain is in that moderation automation mode and half my
Yep.
brain is just like enjoying a hell of a show that was being
Yeah.
put on. So yeah, that panel was absolutely my favorite moment. And it was very funny to look at TikTok and so because some of that stuff really caught on with the Star Wars fandom. Because
Yeah.
there's a big push to save the acolyte. And I get
Yes.
it, especially somebody as talented and a character as really good as Manny Jacinto, not to speak down of any of the other characters, but just that's what was in front of me that weekend, right? Just,
Yep.
how talented he is. And I've always loved him on The Good Place. I understand why people want to save that show. So there's like various TikToks of that panel. One of the other panels he was on later in the weekend with somebody else. It's really surreal to see that stuff like on
Yeah.
TikTok and all the people that are like, oh, his answer. There was a specific question about what would get you to join the dark side. And he said something along the lines of he had gotten a present earlier in the day from a fan that said, join the dark side. We have hot dudes. And of course,
Hmm.
some of the fandom loved that answer. And so now I'm watching TikToks of myself asking that question, and it's a very surreal thing. So, but
Yeah.
it's cool. It's cool.
I did get on somebody's YouTube at least,
Oh, did
where
you?
because yeah, so they were like, oh, they were recapping their Dragon Con, and the only celebrity panel they went to was Catherine Tate, who I had the honor of actually hosting twice,
Hmm.
and I believe it was the second one was on there, and but that was part of their intro. So, but it's never me talking because obviously I'm not the one they care about, but I could like see me like walking down the steps as she begins her intro. So I've seen that a couple times.
Yeah.
So that's kind of surreal as well.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty awesome. All right, well, we'll do a deeper dive on the panels in just a little
Yep.
bit, but I thought I would also ask, Dragon Con is sometimes known as the Super Bowl of cosplay, right? It's an
Hmm.
all-star cosplay event. There's all sorts of gatherings of people that gather at the Hilton in the back and all that. You've seen some of the stuff on the internet.
Hmm.
What to you, Bobby, were there any notable cosplays where you're like, that was, I guess your favorite, I guess, but maybe even if it was just like, dang, that was really notable. I really love that.
So the one that I really remember, because I don't have the time to just sit and people watch, and so it's like if I didn't see it on the Masquerade, I probably didn't see it. But I saw a couple times because of the Doctor Who fandom, because they actually brought back the life size TARDIS into the Hilton. It was not
Yes.
there for the past couple years, but they had the life size TARDIS, and when I walked by, there was somebody who looked like the Ninth Doctor, which is Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, and somebody who looked like the 10th and 14th Doctor, David Tennant. And the genetics also work in their favor. They actually have the facial features
Hmm. Hmm.
like them. And it was specifically the Christopher Eccleston one was there. Not only did he do great with the costume, but he actually said it's I was blessed with the right genetics to do this cosplay, is how he said it. So that's the one. That's actually the one picture I took of cosplay, because I'm not the type of person to go through and take pictures of cosplay. And usually when I was going through the Marriott where all the cosplayers were, I was like beelining to something.
Yeah.
I had somewhere to be. So I am not the right person to ask about the cosplay, but there was a lot of great cosplay there. And I've seen like there have been YouTube music videos and TikToks and all that. But everything is there. People are like, oh, I don't know if this might be too obscure. No, the obscure stuff is there. The mashups are
The
there.
obscure stuff's
Those are
my
the great.
favorite. My favorite. Do you know what my
Yes.
favorite one I saw all weekend
What's
was?
yours?
Because it's obscure enough. I don't know. Some people are going to say this isn't obscure, but I'm like, but who thinks to bring that to Dragon Con in the year 2024? So I saw someone fully dressed up as Linda Richman from Saturday Night Live's Coffee Talk, which is a character Michael Myers, not the guy on my hat, Mike Myers, the guy, the actor from Austin Powers used to play, right? Yeah, of course, now I'm verklempt. Here's the topic. Talk amongst yourselves, right? So we remember that
Hmm.
character. And there was
Right.
actually a
Yeah.
full-on Linda Richmond with like a little Barbara Streisand. And
Hmm.
I laughed my ass off just randomly walking by this person because I'm like, that's so like niche, but I
Yeah.
love it. But I also love, so, some cosplayers plan their outfit for an entire year. Like there are cosplayers hard at work now on 2025, trust and believe.
Yep.
Maybe after
Yep.
a week break, but trust and believe they're working on 2025.
Hmm.
I love the cosplayers that turn it around like that. And I'm talking about
Yeah.
the Olympic cosplayers because
Yes.
that that was a fast turnaround because the
Yeah.
Olympics were what, maybe a month before Dragon
Right.
Con. And yeah, I knew it. I knew the minute the ray gun thing, and I know this gets on your nerves, Bobby, because you're actually a
Mm.
fan of break-in, and there's many talented well,
Yeah.
Ray Gun's
There
more
were
talented than me, I'll say it.
there
But
there were 31 talented athletes and then Ray Gun.
yes, but there were so many people that were dressed as Ray Gun that all convened on the steps.
Hmm.
But I thought that was great. That's funny.
I liked the other Olympic cosplay, and I only saw one of them.
Does it happen to be the French Olympic?
Yes.
That funny. I love a funny recent thing. I was looking the whole time. I was hoping I'd see some boar worms so I could say not the boar worms, but unfortunately,
No.
I didn't see. I think I saw I saw it a picture because I saw this funny ass picture online of
Hmm.
I want to say it was like a Belle from Beauty and the Beast who is outside smoking, and there's just a giant sandworm with a lighter outside of the worm thing. And it's definitely one of those like only at Dragon Con type of
Yeah.
memes. It's pretty incredible. So yeah. I'm trying to think of other cosplays that I would have seen that are worth me. I mean, there's just a lot of good stuff. And the cosplay starting on Wednesday this year, the
Yes.
dinosaur inflatable dance party.
Yep.
fully a Wednesday thing. The kickoff party. You brought up the Marriott earlier. The
Hmm.
Marriott, for those that don't know Dragon Con's across 5 hotels,
Yep.
but in reality, 3 are in the core because they're all connected by sky
Right.
bridges. And the center of that core is the Marriott. And then when you look at the Pulse Bar, there's this big, multi-story sculpture that literally looks like it could be like the warp core of Dragon Con, right?
Yes.
And so that's where a lot of people congregate. So you were talking earlier about making the beeline, but like, sometimes all the people are really congregated there, but that can be your most anxiety, claustrophobia ridden
Yes.
area too. You got to be really careful going through there. So you start to learn some of the ins and outs, but yeah, you see some really creative stuff going through there. So.
Yeah, yeah, and normally there's like chairs and tables. They take all those out and they hide them, and it's just this big open area
Mhm.
at DragonCon. And I'm usually fine going there. I just didn't have time because like I have gone around and like especially if
Yeah.
I've got like friends that are in cosplay, I'll be their helper. I won't cosplay, but I don't mind helping friends and kind of because sometimes especially if you've got an elaborate cosplay, you need a helper.
Mhm.
You need somebody with you to help with various things. So just this year, I didn't get a chance to do that. But a lot of people do group cosplays, and that's what they'll do. Is
Mm.
like they'll be like, I know one person. I've known them outside of this, and I saw them once at Dragon Con, and their group was a Matrix, like the Matrix, and she cosplayed as the Spoon. And so in the pictures, she would just bend for the pictures.
That was the other, sorry, you said Spoon. That was the other great
Hmm.
one I saw online. Somebody dressed up as the Rejected cartoon. If you ever went to Spike and Mike's Sick and Twisted Festival of Animation in the early 2000s, you saw the Rejected cartoon. It's online. My spoon is too big. There were people that
Hmm.
dressed up like that, I saw. But again, that was a picture.
Hmm.
I didn't see that in person. I think
Right.
same things you were talking about too. But yeah, the group cosplays are good. I have a friend group that does The Price is Right. I don't know if
Hmm.
they did it this year because
Hmm.
unfortunately, like you, I had a lot more obligations at the con, so I didn't get to walk around quite as much. But I know they all dress up as like one of them. I think goes as a giant plinko board. One goes as Rod Roddy. One
Hmm.
goes as I think they had a wheel one
Hmm.
year. So and it's great. So yeah, I love that type of stuff. So
Yeah, the picture that I didn't get to see, like I saw it in a picture, and this was a great. And this is the type of stuff that I love. It's the guards from Monty Python Holy Grail. And what they had is they there were a couple of them dressed up, and they had the like the thing that they could hang over a railing that looked like the top of the castle, and they were up on the Pulse bar, which is a level above everybody else in the Marriott in the corner, and they were all just insulting people and tapping their heads and calling down and insulting people a second time from the top of the Pulse bar with with the drape in front of them, so it looked like they were at the top of the castle.
that's incredible. The creativity is off the hook. Off
Yeah.
the hook. All right. So you and
But
I.
but
Oh,
I will say one more thing,
yeah, of
just like
course.
because people are like, "Did you see this person? Did you see this cosplay?" There were 75,000 people there. No, just because they were there did not mean we saw them or were even in the same building at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, so you and I have the biggest commitment personally. I mean, Dragon Con is different for everyone, right?
Yes.
The nature of there being what, 40 different fan tracks, probably more. I'm probably understating it. Of
No, it's like 30
okay,
actually. I think.
all these different fan tracks that exist at, you could spend your time in nothing but, let's say, the Star Trek room and have a
Hmm.
full-on con experience. That's a full-on Star Trek convention for you. And with the celebrities they had from Trek this year, you really could have had just like a Trek con. So my point is Dragon Con's different for everybody. I know the way you used to do it before you got really involved with panels, you were really big in the tabletop gaming space, especially when
Yes.
you could kind of camp there 24 hours. That was like a
Yes.
big part of Dragon Con for you, right? Yeah.
Yes, and that was back when it was in the same room that we could camp in now if you were going to the Star Trek. That's where the gaming was. It was in the
It's true.
basement of that
It's
hotel.
true.
But my Dragon Con changes every year. Like
Mm,
there's been
fair.
some years in the early years I did a bunch of the celebrity big ballroom panels and I was in the audience for those. I remember attending a Firefly one while it was like still on the air.
Mm.
So back then when like the ballroom didn't fill for Firefly. But also like other times I've spent time on the space track, looked through the telescope that they've got set up, and or the EFF track where I learned I'm not paranoid enough to be in that room. Things like that. So it's always changed and changed up what I do every year, which is the other thing I like about Dragon Con is that it is I'm going to say it like the structure of this website, and I got this from one of your friends, the Reddit of conventions. There are all these different conventions. They don't all talk to each other either. That's kind of the interesting thing.
And
But
back when
there's
Reddit
30
was
different
good,
conventions.
opinion.
Huh?
Back when Reddit was good, opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. But the structure, not necessarily the people involved, but like just, how you've got all these little different conventions that have their own programming, and you can live there and not see anything else and still have an amazing experience. So I try to kind of do different areas of the convention every year.
So all of that was a segue to really say this year was really about panels and those types of experiences. And part of the reason here at VOG Network we wanted to do this little breakout with you and I was to talk a little more, because we have our own gaming shows where we can talk a little bit about some of the video gaming related things. But we actually did more than that this year. We had, and you heard me talking about Star Wars a minute ago. So I thought we could kind of walk through some of these different panels that we were involved with at the show. So to kind of tell our listeners and the family from Sunday nights that listen to you and I and so forth a little more about what we experienced. So Bobby, you want to tell us a little bit about, walk us through like kind of what panels you were involved with this year, including things we did on digital media and things that were necessarily main ballroom.
Yeah, so we got promoted up to main programming. We got a good referral, so we got to work with main programming this year. It was a great team to be a part of. Also, it was great. We went through kind of a training session earlier this summer, where we got to kind of get some tips on the Dragon Con way of doing things. We've moderated panels with what I would say celebrities, because video game voice actors that are well known, they are celebrities. Maybe not on the movie and TV stage, but we've been on that stage before, and we kind of know how to handle ourselves, which is how we got this gig. But
to be fair, I have done it with movie people in the horror community here locally, but it's
at
very
Dragon Con.
But not Dragon Con's different. It's a different, and it is, you have to know how they do things because it's different.
Yeah, and I mean I've done them too at at other, like the Southern Fried Gaming Expo and stuff like that. So, but Dragon Con has a very specific way they like to do things, and it's not too different from what we're used to. It's just a different way. And some of the things that they say is actually really good advice that you can take out of it. So I did stuff on the digital media track, but then I had a very unconventional panel. The only thing that I didn't do that wasn't digital media or video game was the same person twice. And it was not like any other, well, it was only like one other panel at Dragon Con, and they were also difficult to work with as from a moderator standpoint. And I say difficult in the sense that they don't want to use a moderator. And I have been in a situation where somebody has been on a panel and didn't want a moderator. That was not fun.
Oh, is that got you? That's what got you in Newsweek, right?
That Variety, actually.
Excuse me, Variety.
Yes, it's in Variety. But I got to work with Catherine Tate, who was Donna Noble in Doctor Who. She was Nellie, I believe, in the later seasons of The Office here in the U.S. She's also done Much Ado About Nothing, things on stage. She's had her own sketch comedy show. She's a stand-up comedian. She owns her own room. She doesn't need a moderator. She does not
by the Vivian on Drag Race. Very important.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And she would love to do Drag Race at some point. The schedules just haven't lined up. That was a question somebody had actually asked. But she does not like sitting behind a table having a press conference, because it's like we're talking about a missing person, and it's just depressing. And so she doesn't sit behind a table. Like, the table is the loneliest thing in the room. So she likes to walk around, and Dragon Con security loves the fact that she likes to walk around in the crowd. They love that part. They're so thrilled with that. And originally, I had Catherine Tate twice. I had her Friday panel, and I had her Sunday panel. Her Saturday and Monday panels were run by different people. And originally, it was you're going to announce her, she's going to come up on stage, you're going to leave, and you can just leave. You can go elsewhere. You don't have to stay in the room. It's over. But Dragon Con introduced something last year because of the strikes. The actor strike and the writer strike for Hollywood was going on at that time. And they were very strict on, you cannot discuss struck work. You cannot promote struck work. You cannot talk about anything in the past. You cannot talk about anything in the future, specifically about any properties that were struck properties. So what Dragon Con had to do was pivot and not allow the audience to ask any of those questions. How they did this in the moment last year was they utilized Discord. They have an official DragonCon Discord server. They had a channel for each ballroom, and you could write your questions in there, and the moderator would read them. They don't need to do that anymore because for things aren't struck work. However, they realized that there was a good segment of the DragonCon audience who loved that that interaction because maybe they don't have the physical ability to get up to stand in the aisle for 40 minutes waiting to get your question read. Maybe they didn't want to speak in front of a large audience. These ballrooms can have thousands of people in them, and not everybody wants to speak in front of 1,000 people. So they really like this. So what DragonCon did for all of their main programming panels was they said the moderator will ask some questions from the audience and then ask a question from Discord. And I show up on Thursday and finally get to meet the main programming people in person after talking to them online and on phone. And I was like, so Catherine Tate's going to run her own room. How are we integrating Discord? And they were like, we hadn't thought of that. And so I finally show up to, so the direction was, well, now I stay in the room and I become the voice of chat, which is something I'm used to doing on Sunday nights. I am trying to be the voice of chat and my own voice, but right. I am used to this, and you're used to this as well. Mm-hmm. And so Catherine Tate shows up 10 minutes before her panel is supposed to start in the back room. Luckily, one of the other veteran moderators was there with me because he's like, it's your first time. I want to be here. Very supportive team. Everything was great about that. Shows up 10 minutes before, goes, where's the closest bathroom? And luckily, the other person was there to tell them where it was, in the tunnels where the celebrities get to walk, so they're not walking through the crowd. And then she comes back 5 minutes before her panel, and she's like, I don't use a moderator. I hope you're okay with that. And I'm like, no, I know, because everybody introduced me as the moderator, and I kept using my quotey fingers. And I was like, no, I'm totally fine with that. But we then introduced the Discord chat thing. And so she agreed that every couple of people, she would come to me and ask me if there was a question from the chat room. And I basically stood off stage, kind of to the side, with my own microphone, and I read every couple things. So I got to kind of steer some of the conversation that way, because the people that were asking questions were asking all the Doctor Who questions, and I was asking other questions that opened up some other avenues. And we had a good rapport. According, my wife was in both of those sessions. One of my other friends was in the first session. We had a really good rapport. She was very receptive. We had to put on a good show. I did not get in her way. It was definitely her doing her stand-up. I was just helping direct traffic when she asked, and I think that she was very, very happy with it. The postscript to that is one of the things about doing the main programming stuff is we're working at that point. I mean, we're volunteers, but we are working, and one of the things is you can't ask for selfies or autographs. Like, you're there to be professional with them and working, but they're on the Walk of Fame. And so after both of those panels, I was walking through the Walk of Fame on Monday, and she was there, had a very short line. I'm like, well, a selfie is $60. So this is how they make their money. Right. So I don't begrudge them at all. And I'm like, you know what? I pulled out I had $60 of cash, had it in my hand, stood in the line, and I walked up, and she was like, put that away, that your money's no good here. And so Catherine Tate actually took my camera, and we did selfies with me. And then my wife got in. She took selfies with my wife. She told me once again how great it was to work with us, and how much she enjoyed it. And then she's like, pick any one of these pictures. And we looked, and in my wife and I, our wedding vows, one of the lines was, if there is a reason that they should not be wed, let the doctor come and take Jennifer away, which is a reference to this episode. And so she actually signed the wedding picture with, to Jennifer and Bobby love Catherine Tate.
Oh, I love that.
So she actually signed that for us. Once again, didn't have to pay for it. That was another like $40 or something. So, but she was, very, very gracious. And so that was all good. She also signed something else because she has a show on Netflix now called Hard Sell, and she was really trying to get people to watch it. And so when we said when we said we put it on our Netflix list, she gave this, and this is all of her characters from Hard Sell, and she's like, please watch Hard Sell, Cell, hard at Cell. So that was the big celebrity interaction that I had. Everything else I had some great digital media panels. About like one of them was about doing moderation on panels and what we learned from our podcast. But I also did, the kickoff panel where we just talked about our history and answered questions, some generic ones, also creating things in this new digital world. That was an interesting panel to be on. And then our networking panel, which I think you'll probably be talking about just maybe at the, when we can get to it, where it was more of a let's get digital media people to talk to each other. And it actually worked a lot better than we all thought it would. And then the video game panel I did was also part of main programming. Anything that was in a ballroom was now main programming, even though it was the video game track, which is partly why we got brought up to main programming this year, because that's new this year. But I did the totally Mass Effect, but not Mass Effect voice actor panel. I think they were okay with voice actor, but actor panel. And this one was interesting because Mass Effect is the only struck work at the entire convention this year because of the SAG-AFTRA strike against American video game companies. It's an American union against American companies. The games you're gonna talk about, not American, so they don't actually apply. Also, not everybody on this panel that I did was American, so it didn't apply to them. They were just doing it in solidarity. But I had thought this was going to be a whole like, we're going to have to just do Discord questions. I'm going to have to not ask Mass Effect questions. But what, and I talked about this a little bit on the show, is that apparently this strike is a little bit different. And the agent called Dragon Con, who then called the programming department, who then called us to tell us what, that we can't do this. But Courtney Taylor, who plays Jack, she is very knowledgeable about this, also very politically active. And so she actually said, no, we can talk about Mass Effect. We just can't promote it as Mass Effect. We can't put Mass Effect on the sign outside. We can't put Mass Effect in the app. But we want to talk about Mass Effect. And because I was like, they were like, should we run microphones? I'm like, well, we can't because this is struck work. And she's like, no, let's run the microphones. And so it was a good 45 minutes because we didn't get the full hour because the previous panel ran over and Mark Muir was on it too. So it's his fault. But we had a good chat, and I read questions. Like every third question was from Discord. The people in the audience asked about Mass Effect, and I would ask about something else in the Discord. So I never asked a Mass Effect question, but the audience answered a Mass Effect question, and they all immediately wanted to talk about Mass Effect and give stories about Mass Effect, and it was totally fine with them. So knock on wood that everything's okay with their agent, but that's between the actor and their agent. I was given that and stuff, but it was really cool to meet them. Fred Tatasciore rubber duck shirt is immaculate, and I've never thought I've needed a rubber duck shirt before in my life until Fred Tatasciore came by. He was the voice of Saren in Mass Effect, but he's also like the Hulk in all the Marvel cartoons.
He's in literally everything.
Yeah, he's got like 500 things that he's done.
Yeah, because he was on a Lower Decks panel for Star Trek, I did too, because he plays a character in that too. So
yeah. So, but that, and it's all whirlwind. Like I didn't get a chance to really talk to any of them. They were getting there like 2 minutes before the panel, and then they had to run because either they had another panel to go to, or they wanted to get back to the Walk of Fame so they could make their money. So I didn't really get a chance to like get to know them or anything, but everything worked out and they seemed very happy. They said it was great. Fred especially told me it was great, so that was nice. And so that's what I did. And that over the 5 days at Dragon Con, other than sleeping and supporting other people.
Busy.
How about you? You were busy too. You were actually busier than I was.
I guess by a
numbers
couple,
wise, number
by a couple
wise.
panels, but yeah, I mean, we were fortunate enough to work with digital media again this year. You mentioned the kickoff, which we had really envisioned as being like a mixer, especially trying to get people from Discord to sort of meet up with each other for the first time. The turnout wasn't, I mean, it wasn't terrible considering it was a little more last minute plan, but I think going
Mm,
into next year, I'm hoping we'll be able to get more people to attend and really treat it as like this might be your one chance during the convention to meet all the other digital media people because everybody else is trying to have their own convention. But I feel like personally, I met more connections, followed more Instagram people, learned about more shows, met more people. Like even though the room wasn't as full as any other panel, like I
mhm.
made really solid connections. So I'm looking forward to doing that again in a future year. I was also able to join for digital media a panel that you didn't mention because I was on it with Phaedra Black and some of the guys from
Mhm.
Botched and some of those folks. It was a panel about streaming, not just video games. Because ironically, even though I do a show about video games, you do a show about video games, we're using Twitch not to stream the game, but to
Yeah.
talk. So it's kind of using things for different purposes. And like Phaedra's done Lego builds, and of course Botch is
Mhm.
doing their D&D. We all know there's all these different things on Twitch that are beyond video games. That was pretty neat to talk about that and have that conversation. So that was some of the work of digital media. I'm gonna speed run my video game panels because I talked in depth on Orange Lounge Radio about them, but I got to work with Baldur's Gate 3, doing an actor
Mhm.
panel, talking about the game. Very great group. I really felt like for an hour, I was able to kind of sit in and eavesdrop, so to speak, on this family conversation because they're such a tight knit group. They've all,
Mhm.
and they're all attending these different events together, whether it's all of them or a couple of them in these different configurations. All of those actors that were involved with Baldur's Gate 3, they're a very close family. And it was just really cool to be a part of that. And obviously, the audience, I would, even though there are so many fandoms at Dragon Con, Baldur's Gate in particular is like this perfect intersection of Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop gaming, video gaming, and like, old British stuff.
Yeah.
Kind of all kind of mishmashed together, which I think really, really attracts fans to Baldur's Gate in
Mhm.
particular. So it was a full room, not as full as when they did that D&D
I
playthrough with
know.
Mark right before yours, but it was full. It was a great experience. Lovely, lovely group. And I really hope Dragon Con brings them back again in the future. I think there's plenty to talk about with that game and their experiences for the future, especially now that mods are going to be a thing. Who knows where things are going to go with that. I similar to you, I did a Mass Effect panel. Now there was a little, I think the game of telephone hadn't quite reached where you were at yet when I did it because
Yeah.
I was like, nope, we're not taking Mass Effect questions. And so I fielded everything through Discord. I hope the fans know I was really just trying to respect the strike issue, but I'm glad Courtney was able to kind of clear that up by the time you
Yeah.
got to the panel. And so but it also allows the panels to be different because I'll say, sure, we didn't really talk about Mass Effect, but I still felt like all the questions we got, like we got some really interesting discussions, just talking about like the art of voice acting and talking about some of their other passions, how crucial improv. They talked at length, and you and I have done a ton of these actor panels before, and inevitably
Mhm.
the question always comes up: I want to be a voice actor. How do I get into voice acting? And it doesn't matter who's on that stage; they're going to say some form of improv class or acting
Yep.
class. And so there
Yep.
was a little bit of a at length discussion about that with that panel as well. So I had a great time with that. I also got to work with and I can say she's a voice actress because she was really a dub for a Japanese video game, Legend of Zelda series, Breath of the Wild specifically, as well as second Hyrule Warriors game. She played Princess Mifa. Her name's Amelia Gotham. Very sweet, very down to earth, very humble. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying, there's a lot of, I think to do Dragon Con, you have to have a sense of humility in the first place. I haven't really met a lot of celebs there who were very, like, I've probably met worse at other cons that weren't Dragon Con. And I'm not going to mention them here. But everybody's been very cool and humble that I've worked
Yeah.
with. And Amelia Gotham was just very, like, she was just like, she's just cool to just like have a chat with. Like, I almost feel like, gosh, we should have just like not even had the formalities of a panel and just like I just want to do like an hour long chit chat with you and just like talk
Yeah.
about like your passion for acting and this theater
Mhm.
school that she's getting into and all this. And I just thought it was really cool, and I really wish her nothing but the best and hope to see her in more Nintendo roles and
I,
other
I
video
I
game roles.
I think it's important to note that Dragon Con does not pay anybody to be there,
Hmm.
and they also don't invite anybody.
Hmm. Hmm.
Everybody applies. Now, they may reach out to an agent and say, hey, this person really should apply
Right.
because we'd really like to see them, but there's no formal invites. There is nobody that's going to Dragon Con because their studio's forcing them to,
Hmm.
which is probably why you get that, thing of like there's that little bit of humility. It's because everybody's there because they want to be there, not because they are forced to be there
That's very
by
true.
a studio.
That's very true.
So that's where it's a little bit different, and also why sometimes you don't get certain actors because they only go where they're invited, and Dragon Con's not going to invite you.
Let's see. So other panels. So I talked about Star Wars a little bit already. So that was
Mhm.
one. I didn't really talk a lot about Star Trek's Lower Decks, which I was really excited to do that panel because, obviously I think Lower Decks is hilarious. I
Mhm.
had seen Tawny and Eugene, the two. So Fred Tatasciore was there too, but he was not on the Star Trek cruise, which Tawny and Eugene were on earlier this year. Tawny, infamously for the last 2 years, has always done some sort of dance party. So, similar, even though the Star Trek cruise is like a floating thing and it's,
Mhm.
different. It's not like a standard convention. The panels are a little different. I still feel like each actor or guest kind of gets their own hour to do whatever they want that speaks to them. And so Tawny will always do a dance party. So a couple years ago, she did the Beyonce album release party for Renaissance, and we listened. It was literally just playing that album start to finish, but it was amazing. I'll always remember the memory of like dancing out there on the dance floor, and then like looking behind me and going, "Oh, hey, that's Denise Crosby getting down right behind me," like type of thing to
Mhm.
Beyonce is a memory. And then this year she did another. She did her birthday because her birthday was right around that time frame. And she's like, "We're just gonna play Beyonce."
Mhm.
She's a big Beyonce fan. And then they did end up doing some other music too. But anyway, my point is getting to kind of see them in that context. It was really cool. Like, okay, how's this going to work out at a traditional sort of panel? And we don't get to interact a lot. I think people sometimes think that moderators might get to really have these long chats behind the stage. No, because if you think about how conventions work, they have a very tight schedule. For example, we just told you Fred had gone from my panel right to your panel, and that is
Mhm.
not next door. They had to go a few blocks to get to
Yeah.
that. So that's part of the thing. And then, of course, they want to make money at their table. That is, how they are making and paying
And
for the, their living fee, really, for
yeah.
a lot of that stuff for conventions.
And
So yeah,
and
that's stuff to
and
get to.
also and also like when they get backstage, you're not the only person there that wants to
Oh,
talk to them.
100%. 100%.
There will be representatives from whatever track that they're part of. So like
Yep.
Doctor Who's the Brit track,
Yep.
representatives from the Trek track for you or the Star Wars track,
I
and they
think I
also
got
want to
lucky
have
because
you.
it was not it was a more of a secondary ballroom. It wasn't like a
Right.
big Marriott one, but
Yeah.
still, yeah.
Yeah, but like even like when I was like with Catherine Tate, it was like
Oh
the
yeah,
Brit Track
yeah.
director was there, the second of the Brit Track was there, and that was their time to talk to Catherine Tate as well because
Sure,
they don't get to
sure,
talk to him,
sure.
and like the entire gaming track was behind the scenes for my
Yeah,
Mass Effect panel,
yeah,
and they were trying to get face time with the Mass Effect actors. So you're not the only one back there, and
yeah.
you're kind of not even like the top priority.
Yeah, you know what?
So
You bring up a good point because I'm thinking, yeah, with the Star Trek one, I think because it wasn't a secondary room and it was the second time they'd done it, they probably had already had most of those interactions because it really was backstage just me and their handlers. So I got to have
Mhm.
a good like 5 minute chat with Tanya
Yeah.
and Eugene at least. Fred came up literally at the last minute, which
Hmm.
is fine. He's moving between rooms. It's no shade. It's
Yeah.
just the reality of navigating a convention. But I did get to have a good like 5 minute chat with them, and so we were actually reminiscing about the cruise, and I kind of talked to them about how I'd seen them at one of the bars. We actually had chatted before, and I don't expect them to remember, but I
Hmm.
was just kind of like, this is really funny that we get to cross paths like this again. This is really exciting for me. So thank you for being here. And that panel was funny as hell. They're Tawny, Eugene, Fred, all of them. Again, those improv skills on full
Yep.
display, just with these hilarious answers. Very impressed with Tawny's knowledge of Trek, which doesn't, of course, it doesn't surprise me. It's just because she writes for it, right? So it's one of those things where it
Hmm.
doesn't surprise me, but to see it in action is
Yeah.
always one of those like where she's literally correcting someone on the fly. No, there were 3 seasons. like
Yeah.
of this
There
Star
are
Trek
4
stuff.
lights. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and all that on display was really something, and there was a really funny thing that happened because there's a large group on Facebook, and I'm not just,
Mhm.
I'm a client as well. It's called Star Trek shit posting, and
Ooh.
it's all in the title exactly what it is. It's just,
Yep.
posts about Star Trek that make no sense, or they're really funny and memes. And they are convinced that because Tawny and Eugene are so funny, they're secretly lurking in the group. And Tawny was like, literally, Facebook is for 75-year-old grandmas. I'm not interested in using Facebook. So she said, I don't even know what this thing looks like. So I pull it up on my phone because I'm a member and I hand her my phone. And she's like, oh, is this, and this is all in a video somewhere that, of course, gets posted to that group. And she's like, oh, is this what I'm missing out on? And she's like, yeah. She's like, I just don't want to have a Facebook. So finally, definitively, hopefully answer that question. They're not in the group. So,
Mhm.
but that was, I
But
mean,
she's seen it now.
now she's seen it. You're welcome. Uh, but in all seriousness, like, that's just the type of funny stuff that, again, I'm really sad that panel wasn't recorded. It's just that good. But you know what? Dragon Con wants you to have those. I mean, Dragon Con also has Dragon Con TV, plug. If you do,
Mhm.
like, I'm pretty sure the Star Wars panel I did, the Baldur's Gate one might be. Some of those panels are going to show up on Dragon Con TV streaming service throughout the year, plug. But some of these other ones, I understand. They want you to be there in the moment. They want you to go to Atlanta, go to the convention, take part. But it's like,
Mhm.
man, if only this had a recording. It's so funny. It's an hour of entertainment on its own. So really thankful to everybody that was a part of that. So that
Yeah,
was everything that I
yeah, my
did.
panels weren't recorded either. Like the
Yeah.
Catherine Tate ones were not recorded.
Yeah.
So it's like you've got to just hope for fan cams.
Hmm.
Which is, because like that's how I watched Catherine Tate panels from the past. Wasn't through Dragon Con. It's just somebody filmed the panel from their seat and uploaded it to YouTube
Yeah.
at some point. So I don't think mine are up yet, but that doesn't mean that somebody's not going to upload them in like 3 to 4 months.
Yeah, I've only seen the clips like on TikTok of
Yeah,
certain questions or like that's all I've really
yeah.
seen. But yeah,
Not I did search TikTok and there's nothing of my Catherine Tate panels.
sorry
So
to hear. Well,
there's TikToks of them meeting her in the Walk of Fame,
oh, okay.
but they haven't uploaded any fan cams. But I did find that one YouTube video that like used that in the intro.
The wild thing for me was that one of my friends from the Rocky Horror Circuit that knew me from the Rocky Horror actually was the one that sent me the TikTok that was like, "Is this you?" And
Hmm.
because they knew, like, some of my friends like know about Dragon Con, but they don't know until they see it, type of
Yeah.
thing. So, and I was like, "Oh yeah, thanks for finding this. This is funny." So that was pretty incredible. Um, okay. I want to hit on a couple other quick notes before we wrap up because you and I actually did get to do the vendor hall. I was worried I
Yeah.
wasn't going to have the vendor hall, but as happens sometimes, sometimes I was supposed to have another anime related panel on Monday. It was canceled. Monday panels, end of con, voices strained, things happen. So I did get to go to the vendor hall after all, and I know you
Hmm.
had a break between panels. You got to go with your wife.
Yeah.
What did you think of the vendor hall? Did anything like catch your eye in particular?
So yes, we did spend some money.
Yeah, same.
But I didn't make it through all of it. Unfortunately, weren't able to get in until after about 4 o'clock on Friday, and it closes at 7. So at about 6:45 is when they're like, "Everybody get out! Everybody get out! Get out!" And so I got to about like halfway through the third floor of 4. So first floor, second floor, halfway through third, and that was it. But I did get some stuff. So I actually just have some of them. Some of it, there's like a tentacle kitty. And so there's a booth that has all these tentacle kitties, and they did a Marriott carpet tentacle kitty little plushie that you could adopt because obviously, like these, you adopt them. So we adopted the tentacle kitty that had the Dragon Con one. And it's mostly the stuff we buy there are actually Dragon Con memorabilia type stuff. So we got a shot glass, and I don't know how it's gonna, but it's a Dragon Con 2024, not shot glass, but pint glass we picked up. Um, and then I got a doorstop, just wooden doorstop because the doorstop we have just kind of sucks.
There you go.
So it says Hodor on the doorstop.
That's sick. I love
Get
it.
get get the joke. And then sometimes, like, with like art and stuff, we we will sometimes get stuff because we're thinking about like how we're going to theme our room. And one of the things that I inherited, because my mother passed away a couple years ago, which meant now I inherited all my childhood things because my dad had passed away 11 years ago. Everything went to my mom and then it went to me. He worked for the phone company. And one of the things that the phone company did in, I think, the 60s was they were throwing away all of these patent documents that they had about old time telephones. And he took a lot of them and framed them and hung them up in our house, in the childhood house. And I have these patent drawings now that he acquired and put in frames. And I'm going to eventually hang them in the house here. Have not done that yet, but we have them. They're ready. And then there's a guy there that actually had some patent drawings.
Oh, wow.
And we picked up 3 of them because that was the thing. But we got the patent drawing for the Mickey Mouse telephone.
Oh, wow.
Now the reason I specifically got this one is because one of the other things I inherited was the touch tone Mickey Mouse telephone that we had as a kid.
Okay.
So this is the rotary version that's on this.
Oh, wow.
But it is so this can kind of go with the rest of the patents. This is a US patent from October 24th, 1978. So this was an actual patent. So this can go with all the other stuff because we actually do have that Mickey Mouse telephone in our gaming room. It's actually like up near the ceiling. It's up on one of the top shelves. But like I said, the discount was for 3 and this is only 1. So I'm thinking, like, what else does he have that I could put somewhere else in the house? So we have the patent design for the NES.
Love it.
And then we have the patent design for the SNES.
Of course.
So those were the 3 that we
That's
were able to
cool.
get. Yeah, it's they're acrylic, and you buy 2 and get 1 free. So those were the 3 that we got.
Cool. Well, I wish I'd thought to put aside the stuff that we actually bought. We did buy quite a few things. I will say from the Trek side of things, I bought a comm badge that I can wear to the cruise next year. But it is a comm badge with a Marriott carpet because it's Dragon Con. But it's not just the comm badge with the Marriott carpet. It's the comm badge with the Marriott carpet with a rainbow stripe for LGBTQIA
That's you
going through it. And I was like, what a perfect mishmash of stuff. So I remember picking that up. Alan got some oven mitts with space cats on one of them, and like it was the same thing. It was like buy 2 get 1 free. And we got one with a bunch of drag queen faces of previous winners of RuPaul's Drag Race all over the mitts. So again, just really niche things you can only find at Dragon Con. It was great. Lots of fun vendors. I thought it was great that like some of the comics, I guess you didn't make it all the way to the 4th floor, but like one of the guys who like drew Archie comics, like OG, was up there selling stuff. I thought that was incredible. So you never know who you're going to run into on the, even in the vendor hall.
Yeah, and like in the past, I bought Marriott carpet oven mitts, I think last year. We got like Tron bath mats a couple years earlier.
Perfect.
For our bathroom. And for those who don't know, like when I say the Marriott carpet, and that's what's the pattern that is on this, and I've also got like behind my Commodore 64 is the actual piece of the old carpet. Hotels, if you've never heard this story, hotels, especially big ones that are in like big downtown areas, will have a special carpet pattern designed. I don't know why, but they do. And it is their carpet pattern. And for 10 years, they keep that carpet pattern for 10 years, and then they rip it out and change it and everything like that. And for 10 years, they had this ugly as sin spoke and wheel multiple colored carpet. And everybody hated it in 2005 when it was installed. And there were like, you could even find like posts on Flickr, because Flickr was around at the time, bitching about the new carpet as it was being installed. And so everybody hated it, and it was not something that anybody liked, but that was the Marriott Marquis signature carpet. And then in 2015, they had to tear it out. But in 2013, 2 Enterprise and cosplayers made a camo suit out of the Marriott carpet and actually like camoed into the carpet, and that actually got that. Then it became a cult. Dragon Con loves their hyperfixations, and it became one of the many cults of Dragon Con. Now everybody loved the carpet, and then they were ripping the carpet out the next year. There was also a little bit of like patent infringement because like that company tried to sell the pattern. Marriott's like, no, we own it. You can't do that. And so you couldn't have it, and so that made people want it more, and that extended the hyperfixation. And then they replaced the carpet with this like striped thing now that nobody pays attention to
Yet.
yet, and then now the old Marriott carpet that everybody hated for like 8 years is now like this beloved cult. People dress up with the carpet. People wrap their cars with the carpet so they can drive them in the parade. People, dinosaurs have this
Put
color.
them on comm
The
badges.
Marriott,
Yeah.
yeah, and the Marriott even now leans into it because they've got the LED video boards all around now, and they actually put the carpet pattern on it. Like, so they know that this is iconic.
Well, it cracked me up because last year the Hyatt got a new carpet downstairs,
Yes.
and they tried to do a whole big thing with like the Hyatt new carpet, and did it look? Check out this.
Yeah,
it was like
the cult of the Hyatt
the
carpet.
cult
And we're
of the
like,
Hyatt. And it's like, girl, you can't make these things. You can't force these things. We love the Hyatt, but we love them for their voodoo buckets, not.
Yes. So that's where that cult. There are these, and it's really a hyperfixation. Like people will latch onto the littlest things. Ribbons are kind of one of the other kind of newer hyperfixations. The cult of having a billion ribbons. They do the ribbon drop at the end of the con to see how long somebody's was, and I think somebody's was like 83 feet. I think is the record now of ribbons that go to the bottom. I have one on my badge.
I have two. I have the one from Digital Media Track, and then one that somebody gave me in line for Spectrum, one of the parties. So
I had one that because one of the vendors I had done something, and because they were selling like a gaming table that had a TV in it, a touchscreen, so you could actually like play on that, and it was like a tabletop thing. And I killed the orc, so he gave me a ribbon saying I killed the orc at this table, and I'm like, I'm not putting your advertisement on my, but thank you. But other people have like funny ones. My wife has one that was like, no couches, only cats, or something like that. So.
All right.
But yeah, but there's like that, and like the cult of John, which is this old FedEx standee. There was a trash can, the cult of Trashy, that was no longer by one of the escalators. There's a lot of hyperfixation. So you're going to see a lot of that at the vendor hall, is that they latch onto, especially the carpet pattern, but some of the other ones like googly eyes and stuff.
But I don't think I caught a new cult this year, at least not yet. Maybe it's something got to wait to see later on. I don't think I caught a new cult being formed yet.
I don't think so.
But you never know. You never know.
There's still time because like it's got to come. Like you don't see it coming. Nobody will see it coming. I will say that seeing the hotels cosplay is always fun to see what they cosplay as. So one of them was Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
So everything was themed as Beetlejuice. One hotel was themed superheroes because they had to pivot at the last minute. But the Marriott, I can't remember what the Marriott was, but the 1 year Marriott was the TVA because it was where they filmed Loki, the series Loki. I was like, lean into it.
Yeah.
So those were always fun.
Awesome. Well, speaking of upcoming years, I want to ask real quick before we wrap up. Do you have any like wish list items? Like, I hope Dragon Con 2025, like a guest or something they do. Like, I'll just give you mine. It's a pie in the sky thing. It's what I want more than anything. I would love to see them get Tim Curry. And I realize that he's, he had a stroke. He's doing a lot better. He's doing some voice acting roles though. And I know he does do some conventions in the limited capacity. Like, even if it was a day, my heart would be so happy if Tim Curry would come to Dragon Con. That's my bucket list thing. Do you have a celebrity or a thing you'd love to see at Dragon Con 2025?
Well, I've got two different answers. One of them copies one of yours. That's not that answer, but I know that it copies one of yours. So we'd be fighting over that voice actor because it's really the video game voice actor stuff. Because I can't really think of any of like the television actor or movie actors that are alive that I would love to work with. I mean, maybe like the Ted Lasso people, because I started getting
Mm.
into Ted Lasso a lot. And there's a lot of Ted Lasso cosplay at Dragon Con. You wouldn't think so, but there is. But really on the voice actor side or the video game side, the video game actor side, who I would love to get is the cast from the Like a Dragon series, the Yakuza Like a
Of
Dragon, getting
course.
the English voice cast for them, because I'd love to just talk to them about like how wacky it is and what all that stuff. And like that was one of the joke I made about Danny Trejo, because Danny Trejo is in the latest Like a Dragon game, and he's done promotional things where he has watched his segment in Like a Dragon, like Sega did a promotional video with him. And so, but obviously I don't know how much he would actually remember from it or anything. But having like the current voice actor, especially the one that's taken over the Kiryu English voice, and like some talking about some of that, and how you deal with the public sentiment that they've heard Kiryu's voice in Japanese for 20 years, and he does not sound like the Japanese voice actor. And how he approached the role and made it his own, because I've grown to be okay with it. It took me a bit. It was a little jarring, and I know he's talked about it before, so that's why I know this is kind of a safe topic. But with how do you handle that? And there's one of the other people that's in Like a Dragon. He also voices the main character in Lost Judgment, which is a spin-off game. And so he, how does he, differentiate between the two characters and stuff? So either that or Ben Starr, which I know is your other answer.
Yeah, I'd love that panel. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I'd love like just a cast of Final Fantasy 16 even. I'm kind of surprised they didn't, I don't know who's available when though, but it's one of those, oh,
Yeah.
I'm surprised that wasn't this year, but you don't know who's doing what. And PAX also can sometimes be in the same weekend, get a lot of that stuff, because I know he went to PAX last year. So
yeah. And also once again, it's one of those like, they don't really invite. I do know that like the video game track will reach out to agents and say, hey, please apply, we'd like to see you.
Yeah, true.
And it's also like who like the reason we've gotten Diablo 4 people is because there are people at Blizzard that used to come to Dragon Con all the time, and they've told their people about it. Like one of the head writers of Diablo 4, who no longer works for Blizzard, he works for Cyan Entertainment now. He grew up here in Atlanta. That's where I first met him.
Oh, funny.
And then he's out there, and he's like, you got to go to Dragon Con. And so it's the word of mouth is what gets people there.
Yeah. Well, speaking of getting people there, I think on the last question, the last note I have for this is, there might be people within VOG Network who might say, you know what, next year's going to be the year I go. In fact, my pal Arya Snark, the cosplayer, or Victoria from Shaking and Crying a few years ago when we did that show, she's going to be coming to her first Dragon Con next year.
Ooh.
So I'm trying to think about what are the tips. Let's try to keep it to one or two. What are the tips? Because there's probably a million to give somebody brand new to Dragon Con. So like the tip for somebody planning on attending in 2025, what would be the biggest tip for them?
Study the app. And I'm going to say this because I have a secondhand story from somebody from this year. So one of my friends was telling me this story the other night, that he had a friend, like a coworker, who has attended conventions, dresses up. Him and his wife dress up in Mandalorian armor as the Mandalorian, and they've done Atlanta Comic Con, they've done MomoCon, they've done these other conventions in the area. And those are all conventions that take place in the convention center. And all convention center conventions kind of have the same thing. You go up, you get your registration, then you go into the expo hall, and there you go. Everything's right there. Dragon Con is not that. So this person did not study the app, said, oh, it's at the Marriott downtown. So they, in full cosplay, drove down, got a parking space about 3 blocks away from the Marriott, which if they had studied the app, they would have realized that badge pickup was past that. And so they had to walk 6 blocks in the Atlanta heat to get their badge, because they went to the Marriott first and then were told where badge pickup was. And it was 2 blocks away. And they finally get there. There was some confusion on where they needed to go. There's a volunteer thing going on. Like some of the volunteers weren't on top of their game at that time. So that's a Dragon Con thing, and they're aware of it. But they finally got their badges and went back over to the Marriott, and they had no clue what to do, because it's not a normal convention. You can't go to Dragon Con and say, well, I've been to PAX so many times, I know what it's like. You don't. There is no other convention that I can think of that is structured the way Dragon Con is. And that's why you really do need to study the map that's in the app. You need to look through the app to see what you want to do. They've got all the events listed in the app, and you need to plan before you show up, because you're not going to be able to walk around and say, oh, that looks cool, I think I'll go do that, because everything's in a nook and cranny, everything's down a hallway. There's no main gathering space where all 75,000 people are. And so you really need to study the app before you come for the first time, or you're going to have so much analysis paralysis. You're going to be so overwhelmed. That person is actually never coming back to Dragon Con. They said, it's not for me. I didn't like it. I was miserable. We were just like being shuffled through sky bridges like a herd of cats. And it's not fun. I don't see what the allure is. I'm not going back.
That's too bad.
And they looked at the app first and like kind of familiarized themselves with how Dragon Con is different from what they're used to, they probably would have had a better time. But since they didn't do that, the first impression was the most important. First impression was bad. They say, I've got better things to do on my Labor Day weekend. I'll cosplay at Atlanta Comic Con instead.
I would piggyback on that a little bit, because I would say have a plan for sure. Like it's kind of like my approach to Disneyland. Have the top 3 rides you want to ride, but be aware that like your plans are going to change. There's going to be a panel that gets full, but also like sometimes like the coolest experiences at Dragon Con are the ones you didn't plan on. Like suddenly you got pulled into this game that was going on, or suddenly you ended up you were walking by this room and didn't even realize this was a thing that was going on at Dragon Con this entire time for the last several years. I think those types of experiences are the best things. So I think it's also set your expectations reasonably, where know the layout of the land, have the things that you want to do, but fully expect some of the best experiences are probably going to be completely unplanned.
Right.
Yeah. And there is no con suite. It's just a myth. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. There is a con suite, but in the 12 years I've been going to Dragon Con, still never been. So
I've been once, and I think it was like 20 years ago.
But that's the thing, is that the con is so effing big that there are things you can go for years and years and still not do. I think it's pretty incredible. So
yeah.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our roundtable, our recap tonight. Thank you so much for watching here at the Voice Geeks Network. If you want to see more of Bobby and myself, Sunday nights, right, Bobby?
Yep. Sunday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. I go on for an hour with the Bobby Blackwolf Show. And then right after me is the record-setting Orange Lounge Radio. And I think you'll be hearing more about that record on this coming Sunday night.
We might have to get into that a little bit. It's pretty exciting. Yeah. So, yes, we will look forward to seeing you all then. In the meantime, thanks for watching us for this full hour. Appreciate it. And hope you enjoyed looking back with us at Dragon Con. Bye, everybody.